Hello again, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 10th day of June. I'm David Percy. Up first, let's see, fire weather update for today, Friday. The dry, windy conditions continue to be widespread across the west and southwest part of the state, causing pretty good spread rates on existing fires, and smoke is impacting air quality in some of those areas over in that region there. Thunderstorm activity will be on the rise this weekend in the interior. This will lead to new fire starts where lightning finds dry forest fuels, mainly in the central and western interior. And the outlook, something of a pattern change expected, but not much moisture is forecast to impact the fires in western Alaska. Though south central and the panhandle will be cool and damp, most other parts of the state will remain mostly dry, more or less, into around the middle of next week. Fire danger chart today showing extreme there from the central interior right on over to the mid and lower Yukon River Valley out toward the eastern deltas there, near and just west of the Kuskokwim Mountains and in the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then mostly very high over extending down across the southern Kuskokwim Valley west of the Alaska Range there into areas west of Iliamna Lake, also over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, some areas of high fire danger, and that extends up toward the southern Koyukuk Valley or southern Kobuk Valley there as well, and extends up into the Yukon Flats, but areas over toward the upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country seeing low fire danger with some rainfall falling. Delta Junction picked up 1,500s in the last 12 hours. That's about 1.5 wetting rains worth, and stays low over areas east and south of the Alaska Range and the Panhandle. And this shot here, this is Anaktuvik Pass taken at 9:22 a.m. this morning. Snow falling there, definitely IFR flying conditions. Visibility is down to about 2 miles in light snow. And new snow is accumulating, as you can see in the foreground there, in the background actually. So a little bit of a change, band of moisture bringing some snow into the North Slope and Brooks Range areas there. And on the satellite image, you can see that band of moisture extending down, almost reaching the Yukon River there. That's bringing the snow, bringing actually rain to light rain to Indian Mountain and Bettles, extending back up toward let's see, Anaktuvik Pass, Galbraith Lake, and to the eastern Arctic coast. A lot of clouds to the west, though, and then a lot of clearing. As you can see, the northern Bering Sea and the central, virtually almost cloud-free. That area, just still some ice hung up on the north shore of St. Lawrence Island, but another batch of fog and low clouds coming through the Bering Strait, heading southward. Otherwise, most of the clouds over the Aleutians. Pribilof seeing some clearing today, and Bristol Bay showers developing over the mountainous terrain, kind of shifting southward in the afternoon. Nothing widespread there, and got another band of moisture working westward along the working westward along the North Gulf Coast. Rain, Yakutat, they picked up about 1/10 of an inch, and that's spreading over into Cordova. Rain this afternoon. That'll be pushing into Prince William Sound, and we'll do a number like the previous several bands of moisture. However, it'll just kind of hang up over the Kenai Peninsula along the Chugach Mountains to the Talkeetnas, as well as over the Copper River Basin, and then just kind of do a slow dissolve in place. Otherwise, a lot of clouds and moisture continue to circulate up into the Panhandle today, and rainfall amounts ranged from about 3/100 of an inch at Juneau to 1,500 at Skagway, and then Petersburg had just under 1/2 an inch in the last 12 hours. And that due to continued southeast flow and surge after surge of moisture coming up from the south and southeast. Forecast for tonight, showers, Copper River Basin. That area showers will work westward there and then kind of stall out over East Anchorage along the Chugach Mountains up into the Matanuska Valley and extend eastward there across the Copper River Basin. Up across the Besna, Northway, Toke, all the way to Eagle, chance of showers tonight. Panhandle, light rain, fog and drizzle along the coast and down toward Dixon Entrance, otherwise kind of showery and cloudy over the inside waters. No change over the Bering Sea. Most of the low clouds and fog over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and to a lesser extent to the north, although fog probably will increase across St. Lawrence Island back toward the Bering Strait tonight. Look for areas of light snow for the Brooks Range, North Slope, and Arctic coast. And for the first day of the weekend, afternoon thunderstorms will pop up along the Alaska Range, possibly the Talkeetnas, up into the Glacier Mountains there, and then down toward the eastern Alaska Range, but nothing really widespread. Certainly nothing more than what we've seen the last few days. Chance of showers, Kodiak Island in the afternoon. No change out over the Bering Sea in the western interior. Mostly clear skies with north winds of 5 to 15 miles per hour. Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, and even lighter, 5 to 10 miles an hour over the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. We're still looking at 15 gusts 25 there through the Bering Strait and the northwest coastal areas, and stays unsettled and damp over the Panhandle, and chance of light snow over the North Slope, Arctic coast into the Brooks Range area. And then the outlook for Sunday, rain or snow, occasional light rain or snow, Arctic coast, North Slope, into the Brooks Range again, maybe some thunderstorms breaking out over the central interior, and showers over the Alaska Range, Chugach Mountains in the afternoon, Talkeetna's usual pattern, but mostly sunny for Cook Inlet into the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, and maybe a few more clouds over the southwest interior areas, but still dry. Wind's not much of a factor out that way, and stays damp and unsettled over the southeast coast. Lows tonight, 25 to 30 for the North Slope and Arctic coast, in the 30s for the Brooks Range, upper 30s down into the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley areas, and then 40s to lower 50s over the remainder of the state. Highs tomorrow, 65 to 70 in the central interior, or 69 the forecast high for Fairbanks, around 70 for Nikolai, Minchumina area, as well as northeast Bristol Bay. Otherwise, upper 50s to lower 60s, south central Alaska and the Copper River Basin, 50s to lower 60s for the Panhandle, near 50 for the Pribilofs, mid 30s for the Copper River Basin. High forecast 32 for Tin City, and lower 30s to mid 30s for the Arctic coast. Lows 25 to 30 again for Sunday morning, North Slope and the Arctic coast, and upper 30s to and 40s over the central interior. Most areas out west, though, in Yukon Delta, lower Yukon River Valley, and the Seward Peninsula will be down into the 30s, lower 40s for the Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay area, Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, 45 to 50 south central Alaska, and in the 40s for the Panhandle. Afternoon highs coming back into the lower 70s around the Fairbanks area. Otherwise, call it 65 to 70. Lower to mid 60s to sit in the Matanuska Valley, upper 60s Copper River Basin, 50s to mid 60s for the Panhandle, mid 60s for Bristol Bay, and lower to mid 30s for the Arctic coast, 35 to 40 for the North Slope, near 40 St. Lawrence Island, near 50 for the Pribilofs, mid to upper 40s for the Aleutians, and then 50s, mid 50s Alaska Peninsula, mid 60s for Bristol Bay and Kodiak Island area. And again, some areas in the Copper River Basin might top the 70-degree mark.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Saturday morning, flying weather. It looks like a lot of IFR for the central eastern Arctic coast, North Slope into the Brooks Range, marginal VFR, and then south of the mountains there, VFR, same pattern over much of interior Alaska. And we've got IFR out over the Bering Sea with some scattered areas of marginal VFR and scattered areas of VFR as well. And looks like marginal VFR east and south of the Alaska Range, including the Panhandle with IFR in Kachemak and Kamishak Bays, and on up the south coast of the Seward Peninsula, possibly into northern Resurrection Bay around Seward. And for the afternoon, that goes marginal VFR, southern Kenai Peninsula, on down to Homer, Anchor Point, Seward, those areas. North, though, VFR, all of interior Alaska, right up to the Brooks Range, North Slope, Arctic coast marginal, Bering Strait, marginal VFR, Kivalina, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, same thing. IFR, St. Lawrence Island, covering the Bering Sea, Pribilofs, and central and western Aleutians, although it could go VFR there for AKwx. Marginal VFR in Alaska Island, western Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island, mostly marginal, but up toward Fognak Island, VFR into southern Cook Inlet. IFR, southern Panhandle. VFR, Lincoln Glacier Bay. Marginal VFR for the North Gulf Coast, most of the Panhandle. IFR for the southern quarter of the southeast coast there into Dixon Entrance. Marginal VFR in across Copper River Basin. Areas of marginal VFR, south central Alaska. Interior areas west and north of the Alaska Range looking pretty good. VFR right up to the Brooks Range. Pretty solid IFR from the Brooks Range there up to the North Slope and Arctic coast, extending down from Point Hope, Cape Lisburne to Teller, Wales area there. Looks like west of Shishmaref, catching eastern St. Lawrence Island, but IFR for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians into Bristol Bay. And for the afternoon, that pulls off the coast of Bristol Bay, but marginal VFR lingering there, Togiak, Dillingham to maybe King Salmon, or more likely Igagik. And for, Igagik, Naknek, whichever, both areas, possibly marginal, but better conditions in the afternoon than the morning. IFR, southern Bering Sea, Aleutians, marginal for the Pribilofs, IFR lingering there, northern Bering Sea to the Bering Strait, and good VFR in the interior. IFR, though, trying to get into Prince William Sound, but doesn't quite make it, but does extend along the eastern North Gulf Coast to near Yakutat, and passes. Not too bad tomorrow for Anatuvik. Probably won't see the IFR you saw today in the snow, but marginal VFR at times. Same thing for Adigan, marginal VFR at times, especially North Entrance. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR day coming up for Saturday. Same forecast for rainy, windy, looking good, VFR flying. Isabel, VFR. Mintasta, VFR in the afternoon. Tanita, VFR. Portage, starting out marginal, becoming VFR. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet now down south of the Bering Strait coast, 4,000 feet to St. Lawrence Island, and the 2,000-foot line there on the south side of the Brooks Range. 4,000-foot pocket there over the southern Panhandle. Warmer air aloft about 8,000 feet. Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, running about 7,000, say, for the Aleutians. And icing, not too much to speak of here. Maybe some isolated moderate icing central and southern southeast coast, and even less of a chance, but still the threat of some icing possibilities there for the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope areas. Jet stream, trough, couple upper level lows there, one over the eastern North Slope, another one Seward Peninsula. 80 knot northeast winds along and off the coast there, coming across the Chukchi Sea, turn west 60 knots into the Yukon Delta, southwest 60 knots across the Koyukuk Valley, and then south at 60 knots, eastern Arctic coast. And at 9,000 feet, 20 to 35 knot winds blowing around that low there over the Seward Peninsula. Otherwise pretty light elsewhere, maybe 35 knots, so that's south of the Panhandle, but getting rather close. Only 20 knots, though, at 3,000 feet down that way, and northeast 20 to 30 knots from the western Arctic coast, Point Lay, down to St. Lawrence Island areas. And as far as turbulence goes, look for some continued mechanical, considerable moderate chop there for the western Brooks Range, DeLong Mountains, Point Lay, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, Kivlina, right on down to the western Seward Peninsula areas. Maybe St. Lawrence Island could see some light to isolated moderate chop. Otherwise, pretty smooth flying around the remainder of the state coming up for the Saturday.
Leatherbacks are the largest turtles on Earth, growing up to 7 feet long and weighing more than 2,000 pounds. These sea turtles are among the most highly migratory animals on Earth, some traveling up to 10,000 miles a year between their nesting and feeding grounds. Prevalent in every ocean except the Arctic and Antarctic, the species overall is declining, more so in the Pacific. In the eastern Pacific, the Mexican population was once thought to be the largest in the world and has experienced an alarming decline.
This trajectory of decline that we've seen, and actually collapse. We're talking about only 20 or 30 turtles nesting every year, where thousands used to just 40 years ago. That's the kind of dramatic decline.
The western Pacific population has been declining steadily, and it's particularly critical to act now before it collapses, while there are enough turtles and nests to respond to conservation measures. But threats to all leatherbacks in the Pacific need to be addressed.
The top threats to populations are uncontrolled coastal development, all the bad stuff on the nesting beaches, egg harvest, poaching of the females, predation on the eggs by dogs and pigs. Deforestation makes the sand too warm and dry and the eggs don't hatch. Another one is incidental capture in fishing gear. During their vast migrations, they get caught in fishing gear throughout the Pacific. And finally, marine debris, which the leatherbacks mistake for their favorite food, jellyfish, and they choke on those.
Protecting leatherbacks in U.S. waters alone is not enough to ensure the continued existence of the species. The highly migratory nature of Pacific leatherbacks requires cooperation and international collaboration. NOAA is focusing on partnerships with Mexico, Central America, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and the Solomon Islands in the Pacific.
Our action plan promotes a holistic recovery strategy that addresses all the sources of mortality. So that's basically ensuring that the remaining nesting sites are protected. And the nests produce as many hatchlings as possible. And then secondly, in tandem with that, is reducing the fisheries-related mortalities. We're working with international partners to incentivize community participation on the nesting beach conservation and developing alternative livelihood programs that wean communities off leatherback resources and introduce alternative methods for food and income. Recovery is going to take a long time, on the order of 20 to 30 years at least, before we see some of these actions bear fruit. But here in the US, we can all help leatherbacks by making seafood choices, for instance, that support sustainable fishing practices. And beachgoers can certainly do their part by keeping our oceans clean of plastic debris, picking up marine litter, particularly plastic bags.
Together with our partners, we are strengthening protection and conservation efforts to ensure a future for leatherbacks, helping them to survive and once again thrive in the waters of the Pacific Ocean.
For over 40 years, NOAA scientists have been collecting data and piecing together the story of the gray whale. Each year, new discoveries are made, revealing the secrets of this ancient traveler. With the northeastern Pacific population recovered, leading scientists from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Science Center continue their research efforts to help save the western population from extinction. The most effective way to identify individuals and count the population is to photograph them from the surface. Using the gray whale's distinctive markings and gray spots caused by parasites on their skin, scientists document these characteristics to identify individuals.
So we're able to track migratory pathways and corridors by the simple use of photo identification. There are other ways to do that as well, biopsy sampling and genetics.
And from the air.
Aerial photography is one way you can study animals based on their size and shape. So you can learn a lot about nutritive and reproductive condition of whales just by measuring their size and shape from vertical aerial photographs.
You can also put satellite transmitters on them and track them remotely. You put the transmitter on and let them go, and you watch them move across the Pacific or down to China or wherever it might be.
To further learn and discover where these great sojourners swim, the team of researchers traveled to Russia and set up camp on Sakhalin Island.
The main focus of our research while we were on Sakhalin was to collect photo identification. If it was a whale that we had not collected a genetic sample from previously, we would also attempt to collect a sample from the whales.
Whereas whales are endowed with natural insulation, their human observers must gear up to brave the cold in order to study these marine giants up close.
We're typically only able to work about 1/3 of the time that we're there, and that's mostly due to this fog that just invades the area and sits sometimes for weeks on end. So it can be very challenging to try and do field work in this site.
Recently, 2 whales from the western population surprised scientists by migrating across the Pacific to the waters of California and Mexico.
It's a really fun finding. It's added another piece to the puzzle that we didn't previously know about. And I would have to say that it's opened up more questions than we had before.
Research scientists from Japan, Russia, and the United States share images of animals they've spotted.
We take a photograph of an individual off of Sakhalin Island, and we get a phone call from Japanese scientists, and they say, hey, guess what? We've got a picture of a gray whale in Japan. We say, can you send it to us? We'd love to try and match it. They'll send us the picture, we'll compare it to our catalog, and we'll say, hey, we've got a match from Sakhalin to Japan.
Unlike many species of whales that still remain on the endangered species list, the eastern Pacific gray whale, once on the brink of extinction, now numbers about 20,000 individuals. Recovery efforts that started 40 years ago and the ongoing research and monitoring by NOAA scientists have contributed to the conservation of the gray whales. Together, with legal protection and public education, scientists are playing their part to ensure the survival of this magnificent migratory animal.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Coastal water forecast, small craft advisories for the south coast for south to southeast winds at 25 knots. North coast, variable winds 10 to 20 knots. Lincoln Glacier Bay, southerly winds at 20 knots. South at 10 for Stevens Passage. Small craft advisories for the Clarence Strait area for southeast winds 25 knots, seas at 8 feet. And then for the second day of the weekend, we're looking at southeast winds down to 20 knots for Clarence Strait with seas comes around 4 feet. And south to southeast winds 20 knots on the south coast, west-northwest 10 to 20 knots on the north coast. And for the Stevens Passage area, south winds at 10 knots, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, northern area channels, south winds up to 20 knots. Variable winds 10 knots, seas 2 feet for Prince William Sound Saturday. Variable winds at 10 knots with 6-foot seas for the North Gulf Coast. Barren Islands, light variable winds at 10 knots or less with 6-foot seas. Southeast winds 15 knots for Kamishak Bay. And small craft advisories for Cook Inlet, south winds 25 knots, seas 7 feet. And for Sunday, Cook Inlet, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Prince William Sound, light southeast breeze at 10 knots. North Gulf Coast, winds will be southwest at 15 with 5-foot seas. Barren Islands, southwest winds 20 knots. Kamishak Bay, southwest winds 15 knots. Kodiak Island, variable to northeast winds at 10 to 15 knots. West-northwest winds 15 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, 5-foot seas. Bristol Bay, southwest winds 15 knots, seas 5 feet. And for Sunday, west winds at 15 knots with 3-foot seas for Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, west-northwest winds 15 knots. Kodiak Island, southwest winds 20 to 25 knots, strongest in Chillicothe Strait with seas as high as 7 feet. On Alaska Island, first Saturday, west-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Unimak Island, Adak and Atka, all light and variable on the wind forecast at 10 knots with 3 to 4-foot seas. Amchitka Island to Shemya, look for north winds of 15 knots. Outlook for Sunday, west-northwest breeze at 15 knots from Shemya to Amchitka Island, Adak and Atka Islands, northwest winds 15 knots. Fox Islands, north to northwest winds at 15 knots with 5-foot seas. For the Pribilof Islands, Saturday, northwest winds 15 knots, seas just 3 feet. and the Kuskokwim Delta coast northwest at 15. But small craft advisories for the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, where winds will be north at 25 knots. Northeast winds 20 knots for St. Matthew Island. And small craft advisories continue for St. Lawrence Island on Sunday. North winds sustained at 25 knots. The southwest coast, winds will be northwest at 20 knots. Pribilofs, north at 15. St. Matthew Island, northwest wind at 20 knots. For the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds will be northeast at 15 knots. North 15 knot winds in the forecast for the central coast, picking up to 20 knots out of the north for the western Arctic coast, seas at 5 feet there. And small craft advisories from Cape Beaufort to Wales for north winds at 25 knots with seas running 5 to 6 feet. And for Sunday, small craft advisories from Wales to Cape Thompson for north winds at 25 knots with 6-foot seas. And then from Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort, north winds at 20 knots. Northeast winds 15 knots for the western Arctic coast, and for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, winds will be northeast at 10 knots, up to 15 knots though, toward demarcation point. For tonight, look for areas of light snow for the Arctic coast, north slope into the Brooks Range, continuing like today, and still breezy for the western or the northwest coast there from Point Ley down to the Bering Strait. Otherwise dry over the western interior. Low clouds and fog with light winds will be quite extensive over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Showers southeast interior, rain southern panhandle, showers to the north. And then for Saturday, drying out from the North Gulf Coast will be some scattered showers over the northern panhandle, a chance of rain over the southern areas. Afternoon thunderstorms scattered along the Alaska Range area into the Wrangell Mountains. Otherwise showery with partly sunny skies, mostly sunny over the western interior. Chance of snow from the Kobuk Valley northward across the western Brooks Range and North Slope areas. Otherwise, no change out over the Bering Sea with light winds and dry conditions continuing. That also holds through Sunday out west for the Aleutians and Bering Sea with chance of sunshine in some areas, Pribilofs, Adak, and Atka. Otherwise, mostly cloudy, cool, and a little showery in the afternoon over the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.